Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. It's time for the main event, the million dollar setup, or maybe the $1 trillion setup is probably a better way to look at this, right? Uh, this is this is the biggest name in the market, one of the better performing tech stocks during this recent sell-in, and it is easily going to be the most watched name reporting tomorrow night. Obviously, I'm talking about Apple. And, to say that the attention and expectations are the attention and the expectations are going to be dramatically increased on Apple, considering how much we have really spun around based off these FANG reports, right? Uh, so Netflix, maybe not so much. Netflix had a good number and sold off, but then you started to see with Microsoft, big beat, gap up, tech rallied. What happened with Google and Amazon? Both got hit pretty hard and tech sold off. And then now today, Facebook Facebook had a mixed number, was trading higher, and that was enough to like spark tech. So you can see we're basically hanging on the word of all these like monster tech names. So there's no bigger name than Apple, and that means that it's going to be really, really, really important. So I'm obviously this is an options and play video. So I'm not going to get into the actual numbers, like like the iPhone sales, the margins, stuff like that. For the purposes of this video, not going to jump into that. I mean, it is worth talking about what it's done the last couple quarters, right? And in that sense, Apple is actually coming off two pretty solid numbers in a row, two back-to-back beat and bottom line guide higher. So here, right, kind of dropped down at 200-day, had a little scare ahead of earnings, and then it popped after a nice solid beat and raise quarter. And then, I mean, this extension was due to like the Buffett stake. And then back in August or end of July, just a really nice solid beat and raise, and that really created like the momentum for the run up to a trillion. So basically, right around like 207 change, I believe, is when it crossed the $1 trillion mark, and basically since it crossed it, it hasn't really dropped below it. It had a little dip to it, but it didn't actually close underneath it. So firmly above $1 trillion, and it's in the Dow, it's in the S&P, it's in the Nasdaq. So how Apple goes is going to influence so many other things. So from the perspective of momentum, stock momentum and earnings momentum, things are you have to look at this as like through like kind of like a bullish lens, right? So coming off back-to-back beat and raise quarters. What you also want to look at now, so with that aside, you want to see what it's done. So if we go back 3 quarters, actually, so just basically the reports for this year. So starting in February. So actually, February was a beat, but also a guide lower. But going to February, Apple traded off about $7.50. So like top to bottom, like that was like the extent of the move. So when I say what it moved on its earnings day, I talk from about like top from where it closed the day of earnings, so like the day before it reports, to like the top of the range of the day after it reports. So for Apple in February, that was about $7.50, give or take. In May, that was closer to like $8. So 7.5 and then 8. And it was 7.5 lower February, about 8 higher in May, and then in July or in the August timeframe, it was about $11. So it closed around 190 and traded up to about 201. Give or take. Not exact prices, but for the most part, I mean, like those are the numbers you're working with. So the average of those three, 7.5, 8, and 11, you're going to get somewhere in like the 9 ballpark. So taking those three, you're looking, it's moved on average about 9 points this year on days that it's reported. Now going to the weekly straddle, it's priced in about 11. So yes, that was in line with what it moved last quarter, but last quarter was also the largest it's moved in quite a while. So using the average, you're looking at options this week, and you're saying like, it's kind of expensive. Pricing in 11 points. Oops. Pricing in 11 points, and I don't know why I just refreshed it. Apple just unusual. All right. So free stock charts throwing me a curveball here. Guess it didn't like what I was saying about Apple, huh? Okay, so basically you have options now that are priced above the average move for the year. And you can't distance or you can't separate Apple from the overall environment, right? So all of its peers, so if you throw the FANG names into the same class as Apple, none of them are trading higher than where they were after reporting in the summer. So July, August timeframe, right? Amazon lower, Google lower, Facebook lower, Netflix lower, Microsoft maybe dancing right around it. Apple is still holding on to a sizable chunk of its gains. So people have not sold. It's up. It's up pretty substantially year to date, and it's not very far removed off its highs. Even while tech, kind of got roughed up, like this seemed to be a name that people were hanging on to. So it's tough. It's a tough setup. Like long story short, this is a very tough setup on Apple because expectations are while people might be a little bit more nervous, like they're still pretty high. Like stocks like that see people see expectations getting walked back will tend to be like you'll see analysts start talking down their estimates, and it hasn't really happened this quarter. That was a pattern on Apple in the past, where you'd see analysts start to get more nervous and start to cut estimates, and you haven't really seen that happen. So expectations are still high. The options are priced really high, and the stock is still up quite a bit, even just since last quarter. So, it seems that the risk reward is almost more favoring like the downside into this setup. As much as momentum, earnings momentum, and stock momentum says higher, the risk reward seems to be slightly favoring the downside, just because if Apple doesn't have like a clean beat and raise, as we've seen from a lot of these tech names, that in this environment, like kind of a mixed number tends to lead to some selling, and Apple could have room. I mean that $1 trillion mark at right around 207, that's roughly 11 points lower, and it could be interesting to see, because not only is it the $1 trillion mark, but it lines up well with like the 100A. So personally, probably not a name I'm going to be involved in. I don't love the setup one direction. I think maybe it favors the bear side a little bit, but options are more expensive. Expectations are high, and in this environment, it's been kind of difficult to get paid on tech stocks, specifically that are trading near their 52-week high, going into earnings. And Apple, as much as it has like a really like stable bid, it just seems that you can't separate the performance of this stock from all the other like FANG names, and a mixed number could lead to like the start of a pretty substantial pullback. That being said, as we've seen, so even though I'm probably not going to be involved and a little bit more cautious on this, we have seen how much, just like a not terrible report from Facebook has led to like a decent bounce in tech. So if Apple's good, or maybe if Apple's just not bad and the stock is flat to up, that could really help this rebound in tech gain some momentum. So if you're not interested necessarily in playing Apple, you could look at possibly like the Qs, or even some of like like the other like beaten up tech names that are starting to rebound a bit, because if Apple keeps things going, right, then there could be some good potential in some of these names that have reported that have options that are slightly less expensive. So the implied volatility is contracted because you're not paying for an earnings report. So that could be an area that I look at instead of like specifically targeting Apple. So win or lose, right? Or whether you're involved or not, I mean, definitely a name that has to be on your radar just because of the impact it's going to have on basically everything Thursday night and Friday morning. So hoping for some good action there. Definitely going to be on the radar, even in the aftermath. If it sets up well after the report, I mean, it could be a name you hop in. I mean, as it's shown like the last couple quarters, it's been a pretty good trending name in like the 2 to 4, 5 sessions right after. When it beat here and took off higher, and then it beat, and then it had a pretty nice trend after. So even if you're a little bit less risk averse into the print, the last couple quarters has shown that you can still make money like hopping in right after. So again, like that might be something that I look at like right after the print, depending on what the setup looks like. So as always, reach out, questions, comments. Love to hear from you. It's been a really, really busy week, and still plenty more earnings. Even after this week, next week it'll still be pretty busy. So lots to look forward to. Expect a ton more earnings trades coming down the pipe. So get ready. Have a fantastic night, and I'll talk to you guys all tomorrow.